Are you a new leader? You may be failing and not even know it. Stick around and I'll go over this 30-day challenge template, how to pull yourself up to be a 1% leader. If you haven't watched my previous video on the tactics used, please check the description and then come back to this video. All right, so let's go through the template. As I mentioned, there is a video that goes through the tactics and the reasons why you may be failing as a new leader. This template will go over how to track different things that will help you succeed in your first 30 days, or even if you've been a manager for a while and you just want this, you want to use this challenge template, then this is a video to watch. I'll leave a link in the description so you can download it for free. So just looking through the template, the first page just explains how to use the template, and then the second portion is the actual template you'd use for the 30 days. So just quickly going over it. It's based on tracking the various 10 tactics, which I discuss over the 30 days. And then this is generally used for up to 8 employees. So it's designed for that. If you have 10, 12 employees, you can print 2 sheets. Going to the first section, it's called Mr. Know-It-All or Overreacting. Again, some of these things may not make sense to you, so it's really critical to watch my previous video. So in the first section, you'd review at the end of each day, were you a Mr. Know-It-All? Did you overreact? Were you impatient, angry in a response? In that case, you'd put a check if you succeeded, or an X if you failed. The second section, which is classified as processes, you write down any new processes or requests that you required of your employees. And for the next 4 weeks, you would follow up to see that they're complying, to see that they build habits so that the processes take in full effect and you don't have to micromanage it anymore. The following section is training. So writing down any events where an employee asks you to do something and where you intentionally showed your employee how to solve or fix their own issues. So ultimately, your employees are resolving their own issues and you're having more time to manage your overall employee base and strategize around how your department's going to get better. Next section is consistency. So there may be some times where you're asked to do something or asked for a question, and it's just about being consistent with your employees so that there's no issues of inequality. The next section, small issues. Writing down any small issues that you need to nip in the butt early to avoid more significant issues in the future. The following section, meetings. So being critically prepared for your meetings so that you look like someone of authority and people will respect you more in your meetings. The next section, your power. This talks about you as a manager, as a leader, as a supervisor, as a team leader, as a director, how to ensure that you are making the hard decisions that are required and reminding yourself that you are a leader and you do have power. This builds confidence and gets away from procrastinating on a decision that you should have made. The following section, employee buddies. So here you're writing down the initials of your employees, rating them in terms of the level of friendship that you have with each of your employees, reviewing if the friendship impacted your ability to make a decision within that week, and reviewing if you hung out with your employees after work. The final section is employee personality. So recording, so you'll see when I go through the actual template, recording the various information pieces that are required. And I'll go through that a little further. And then as well, after the 30 days is completed, looking back, did this template cause you to intentionally improve in a few areas? If you did even a bit of this template and followed through, you're going to be that much better within the 30 days. And again, if you wanted to do this again, you could just reprint this out and try it in 3 months from now and do the challenge again to move yourself even up that much further. And as I always say, if you have any specific situations or questions, email me at robinlandryworklife@gmail.com, and I can try to help you work through those problems. So here's the template. So it's a printable PDF. And just going through, here's the sections that were indicated above. So daily tracking, this is about the processes, the training, being consistent, the small issues that you need to nip early on, preparedness of meetings, reminder of your power as a leader, discussing things in regards to employee buddies and your friends, and if that's impacting your ability to manage, and just understanding the differences in employee personalities and do you have to make tweaks to the way that you manage your employees. So going up to the first section, so how you'd use this. So here's about 4 weeks, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so on. So at the end of each day, would you assess and review, indicate to yourself, yes, I was a Mr. Know-it-all. I was acting like a Mr. Know-it-all, which is sort of detrimental to employees building respect with you. So if you were, then you put an X. If, let's say, the next 3 days you were really conscious of that and you did well, you'd put a check mark. Going on to the next section where you do a daily tracking is overreacting. Did you lose your patience with one of your employees? Then you would put an X because you failed. If you did really well for the next 5 days and you weren't overreacting, you weren't impatient with your employees, you were listening and helping them in a particular situation, then you put checks. And then you would have an assessment. You can look back to see how many X's and checks did you have at the end of those 30 days. Going on to the next section, processes. Was there a process that you implemented, or did you ask your employees to do something for, you implemented a new statement of work or a work instruction where your employees are now required to do this specific task? Well, it's great to implement that, but if there's no follow-up for compliance, I can almost promise you with my experience that it's going to fall off after a week or so, or it's not even going to start. They won't even start unless they're reminded. So it's really critical in this particular situation. So you write down that request. There's spots for 2 requests over the month. And then after the first week, follow up to see if there's compliance. Put a check or X, or you can put whatever comments you want. And after 4 weeks, if there's consistency, it's more highly likely that those employees are going to start being consistent with that process, and then you won't have to follow up in the future. But if you don't do follow-up when you ask an employee to do something or you implement a new process, you can be guaranteed that that process or request will not be followed by the majority of your employees. Some employees are very, they follow everything to the T, very compliant, and you don't have to worry about those. But for the most part, other employees are either intentionally not going to be compliant to test you or just procrastinate. And that 80% of employee bases are the employees you need to manage to get them on board and get them following through in what your request is. The next section is training. So your employee comes up to you, hey, how do I do this? How do I look at this data? How do I analyze this data? Okay, don't just do it for them. What was the thing that they were asking? Record it here. There's spots for up to 4 over the next 30 days. Record it and just put some general details of how you train that employee. What I do, I get the employee to sit in my seat if I can be done on my desk, sit in my seat, and I explain to them how to do it, and they do it on my computer. So they're building motor muscle memory to be able to do that, and it's more likely that they're going to be able to do it in the future. They really don't want to have to wait for you to do it. So the more you can help your employees learn how to solve their own issues or deal with their own issues, the happier they'll be and the less micromanagement that you have to do for your employees. And it gives you more time to start focusing on being a strategic leader, which is very critical to the long-term performance and success of your department. Consistency. So here you would write an employee request, and then you'd put the response that you did in order to try to maintain consistency. Something that typically comes up very commonly, and it doesn't matter what industry you work in, is an employee requesting a modified work schedule. They need to come in 15 minutes later because you need to drop off their kids or whatever it is. So it depending on your ability to have approval to do that. I don't know if your HR department has to approve that, but either way, if you do give the modification, you should put some response here of what you said to them. A really good response is, yes, I can do this. However, if I have a bunch of employees having concerns with this, I may have to revert back. So it's good to say that up front, because then if you're getting a lot of negative vibes from other employees because they don't think it's fair or whatever, and you want to revert back, then it's easy to go back to that employee, say, listen, it's not working. I'm getting a lot of pushback from other employees, and we just need to cancel this modified work schedule or whatever the request was. Small issues. So here you'd record what was that small issue that you started noticing. Perhaps somebody's not signing their date or name on a piece of important document that gets filled out by all your employees once a week, or whatever administrative thing it is. It could be a quality issue if you're in manufacturing. It could be a quality issue that you're looking at, and you see it's starting to slowly happen periodically. Well, those are the things you need to communicate directly to those employees very immediately to be able to stop them from occurring and avoid a larger issue from happening. It's very critical to nip the small issues early on to avoid having to deal with a bigger issue. A bigger issue is more public to the rest of the company, so you look worse as a manager, unfortunately, and it's just naturally more difficult to manage and try to resolve a larger issue. The next section is meetings. So do you want to look like you have authority, like you're an organized leader? Well, do these simple things. Show up early to your meeting. So, do this assessment on 3 meetings within your 30 days. So did you show up early and have all your files open if you had to have some drawings or some particular documents open, project files if you're a project manager? Yes, I did. So write that there. Did you have a meeting purpose defined before you even got to the meeting? So what was the general purpose of the meeting? What was the ultimate outcome? So you should record that. So going into that, you have the purpose and what are some key points. There might not be enough space here, but you can write it in a journal book if you have, or some book that you carry around with you. And then at the end of the meeting, what was your overall perception of how that meeting went? Rate it from 1 to 10. The next section is called Your Power. So it's a reminder that you are a leader. You're not supposed to be cocky. You're not supposed to be a Mr. Know-it-all, but you do have power to make change. Don't ever forget that. Many years, one of my previous managers always reminded me, when I was a production manager and he was the director, and he said, don't ever forget that leaders have power and they need to use it at times. So in this particular thing, was there a hard decision that you were contemplating making or communicating out to your employees? Write it down. Did you actually go follow through with communicating that out? What was the outcome of that decision? Sometimes you'll find that there wasn't really any outcome. They just followed through with it. I would say probably 90% of the time, maybe even higher, they're just going to follow through and do it. And you're building all this fear up, thinking there's going to be all sorts of pushback. It's a smaller percentage of the time when they're actually not going to do it because they realize you're the leader, you're the manager, you're the supervisor, you're the director. So this is a good point to try to implement this, at least one or two hard decisions that you typically wouldn't make, and just do them. And you'll see that you'll start to gain confidence. And one thing I didn't mention was the word confidence, but really this is about not only gaining respect, it's about building up your confidence to be a stronger leader, and also build up confidence so that in the future, when another higher level position opens, you're confident enough to take that position on, and you look confident and are perceived as confident to the people that are going to probably interview you. The next section, employee buddies. So here, put the initials of the employees you have. What's the rating of the friendship you have? Maybe some of them you're not really a friend with them, so you can just put ones. Some maybe you're good buddies, so tens, or in between. And then each week, did your relationship impact making a decision? So put a check. If you were good that week, it didn't cause an issue, or an X if you failed because you wanted to make a decision with that employee, but because you were such a friend with them, you didn't do it. So that would be an X. You'd fail, because you allowed your relationship to cause you to not make the decision. And also, so that you can sort of correlate between the two, did you hang out with any of those buddies after work, those friends, or did you hang out with them after work? Yes or no. And then you can correlate back. If you find that this friend you're really good friends with, you had a couple of X's because you couldn't make a decision with them, and you find out you're hanging out with them after work, well, then you really need to think as a leader and as in terms of your future career, perhaps you need to stop hanging out with them after work initially if you're newer as a leader. I've been leading for many years, and I've had different departments, different teams at different companies. And early on, I would have that struggle. Now, I don't have that struggle. I can easily go play sports with any of my employees after, and the next day, I can easily make a difficult decision or say, hey, you need to work on this. So it depends on where you are, but you need to look back and correlate. Does your friendship or your hanging out after work impact your ability to make a decision with that employee? And then finally, employee personality. So here you would write down the initials of your employees, indicate, do you think they're confident or do they come across as confident? Put that in there. Do you perceive them as accepting change easily? If you put something out, you want them to do something differently, are they easy to accept it? So record that. Do they accept criticism easily? Note that down. And so then you have some information about your employees, because these key characteristics typically determine how, in terms of if you're able to give them criticism, not if they're able to easily accept change. So it's really critical to record these down. So now that you have that, when you're making decisions or asking them to do something, what could you do differently to manage that employee based on this information? Is there something you could do differently? And then what was the result of trying this different method of managing them? Some employees, you can just tell them straight out, hey, I want you to do this. They just do it. Other employees, you gotta sort of sit with them, maybe explain the why. That's always important with anybody. Explain what's the purpose behind this, why you're doing this. But some people you have to really get them on board. So it's critical you don't just treat everybody with the same paintbrush. It's critical that you assess your employees, understand the differences between them, and try to work with each one of them a little differently. Remember to print this template out and start tomorrow on your 30-day challenge. This concludes reviewing the 30-day challenge template. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that you'll print out this template and start using it tomorrow.